What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 5 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We'll do our best to answer them all, but with that being said, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdown, I want to highlight the sponsor of today's video, OddsJam. OddsJam continues to be the place that I use for all of my sports betting research, from the NFL, NBA, MLB, to daily fantasy and everything in between. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you firsthand all the amazing tools OddsJam has to offer. Starting with their positive EV tool, which identifies situations where a single sportsbook has mispriced their line compared to the rest of the market. They're basically willing to pay a lot more so that you bet with them compared to the other sportsbook. At the end of the day, you're getting the best odds, essentially a mathematical edge and guaranteed money in the long run. But also available is OddsJam's arbitrage tool, which shows situations where the market is so mispriced that you can bet on both sides and guarantee a risk-free return. OddsJam's calculators show you exactly how much you have to bet on the over and under and what the respective guaranteed risk-free return would be. There's also OddsJam's Sportsbook tool, which consolidates all available market info, over 200 sportsbooks, and provides updates in real time and allows you to see line movement. But my personal favorite is their Fantasy Optimizer tool, which is great for those using PrizePicks, Underdogs, or other daily fantasy sites, as you get to see discrepancies between all of these sportsbooks. Imagine, PrizePicks has a Patrick Mahomes line at 200.5 passing yards, and all other books like FanDuel and Underdog have this line at 230 passing yards. Well, getting the over 200.5 on PrizePicks would be an absolute steal. Guess what? OddsJam does that for you. And the good news is, if you sign up today and use our code PIGSKIN, check the link and promo code in the description of this video, you will get 25% off your first month. OddsJam also has a 7-day free trial, so you get to try before you buy. So don't waste any more time and sign up for OddsJam using our code PIGSKIN today. We kick off Week 5 on Thursday with the Bears at the Commanders. And here, from a wide receiver start perspective, let's start with Chicago. DJ Moore, he's been on a nice little roll these last couple of weeks. Now, to be fair, this last week he did go up against one of the worst teams in the NFL in the Denver Broncos. But look, I don't think that the Commanders are going to be all that elite on the back end of their defense. They can be exposed there a little bit. And I would still take a flyer on DJ Moore. Now, again, he's not going to do what he did last week, but he can get you double-digit fantasy points. And, I think that's what we can at least come to expect from him. And all things considered, when you look at that offense and the state of the Bears, you could do a lot worse with DJ Moore. So to me, he's kind of in that boom or bust wide receiver 2 category. Then for the Commanders, Terry McLaurin, I'll start him here. High upside. He's been the number 1 wide receiver for Washington as expected, and this Bears defense can absolutely be exposed. Now, notice I have Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel as sits. If you're desperate, you need a dart throw, maybe Jahan Dotson can go into your lineups again just because of how porous that Bears defense is. But the reason I have him as a sit, I'm a little bit tentative, is because, we haven't seen the target share. He's questionable. Just the volume hasn't been there, and I don't think that Washington is one of these offenses where you're going to see multiple fantasy relevant wide receivers. We're going to get Brian Robinson, we're going to get Terry McLaurin, and then afterwards it could be Curtis Samuel, it could be Jahan Dotson, it could be somebody else. That's why it's a little bit too rich for my blood, but I understand if you need a desperation play, and if you're looking for upside, the opportunity is definitely there. But let's move on. Jaguars at the Bills here. Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, I have as starts. Yes, Calvin Ridley has been let's just put it bluntly, disappointing these last couple of weeks. After week 1, it's kind of been downhill afterwards. Now, he had his day salvaged last week with a touchdown, but Christian Kirk is kind of, over this last month, reasserted himself as the wide receiver 1. To be fair, I think this is a matchup where both these guys need to be heavily involved. And for that reason, I think both can be starts. But right now, Kirk seems like the safer play, higher upside. I think that Kirk, high end wide receiver 2, Ridley, boomer bust wide receiver 2, low end on that. And then for the Bills, Stephon Diggs, I will start him confidently, top five wide receiver pretty much every single week. Then notice I have Gabe Davis as a sit. And yes, Gabe Davis had a touchdown last week, but he only had 3 targets. And that's what worries me here. What I've said about Gabe Davis since the jump, and that's he's inconsistent. You're going to have some games where, sure, he sees decent target share, but then other weeks where it's like 2-3 catches a game. And if he doesn't have a touchdown, that's what's going to kill you. And I could see the Bills here just going with Diggs, going with James Cook, and then just Josh Allen getting it done on the ground and, spreading out the football. That's why I'm a little bit worried about Gabe Davis, and I have him as a sit. I prefer the more consistent play in general. Then Saints at the Patriots. I'll start Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. I don't love this matchup as far as pass catchers are concerned, honestly. Olave coming off his worst performance of the year. I think he's going to bounce back. I still believe he's the best wide receiver on this team. And then once the touchdowns come, it'll kind of, balance out as well. I think both him and Michael Thomas are probably in that mid-level wide receiver 2 category. Let's also not forget that Derek Carr is a little bit banged up. Alvin Kamara just came back. So you've got a lot of things going on in this equation. Alvin Kamara seeing 13 catches last week. That's not going to happen every single week. And then Derek Carr, once he gets healthier, he's going to be able to spread the football out more down the field, which is going to help Olave as well. So be patient. I would say last week was a fluke on a lot of different levels for the Saints offensively. And for the Patriots, it's pretty simple. I'm sitting all New England wide receivers. That's been the case for a while now. Just too many inconsistencies there. I don't believe in Mac Jones. And the Saints defense is pretty stingy. So I don't love the situation there for New England. Moving on, Titans at the Colts. I'll start Michael Pittman here. And yes, he's coming off a disappointing performance last week, but I think he'll get back on target. He's still somebody that's, the focal point of that offense. It'll be interesting to see if Jonathan Taylor comes back this week and how that could potentially change the Colts offense. But either way, Pittman is the top pass catcher for the Colts. I'm not really even considering any other Colts pass catchers, especially with Anthony Richardson kind of leading the ship. To me, it's going to be a one wide receiver fantasy situation there for them offensively. Then for the Titans, I'll start DeAndre Hopkins, but only in PPR formats. You'll eke out probably 10 points in a PPR format with Hopkins, but you'll sweat it out. It won't be pretty. You need some touchdowns there, but I just don't believe in this Titans offense. That's what worries me here. And then I would sit Nick Westbrook-Ikine for the Titans. Don't go chasing the touchdowns, especially in this Titans offense. Moving on, Ravens at the Steelers. I'm only starting George Pickens here. And note that Kenny Pickett is a little bit banged up, so we could definitely see Mitch Trubisky here. But either way, yeah, I still think whoever the quarterback is, Pickens is the top wide receiver for the Steelers. He's going to get some targets, and that's what will make him valuable here. Again, he should be able to get you at least 10 fantasy points, but it's tough to really, really get excited about him without the Steelers having a true talented quarterback. For the Ravens, I'm sitting all Baltimore wide receivers. Simply put, I think there's just a lot of guys here that, don't have elite talent. Like, we know the Ravens are going to run the ball. We know that Mark Andrews is going to be one of the top pass catchers. And then, sure, Zay Flowers is a popular name. But, when somebody like Rashad Bateman comes back, if Lamar Jackson struggles airing it out in this divisional clash, I think you can potentially set yourself up for a trap game with these Baltimore wide receivers, so I would rather pass on them. Then Panthers at the Lions. One wide receiver apiece here to start for each team. For the Panthers, Adam Thielen. In PPR, he has been great. I think you can easily get 15 points from him here. The Panthers are going to have to throw it a bunch. And then for the Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, huge upside. And I think that he's going to be a borderline top 10 wide receiver again here versus the Panthers, even though I imagine it's going to be pretty run heavy here for the Lions, considering how much the Panthers struggle in that area. And then I'm sitting Terrace Marshall for the Panthers and Josh Reynolds for the Lions. Again, I would say don't go chasing the single performances from last week. Other than Terrace Marshall's performance from last week, he hasn't really done all that much. Josh Reynolds, it's been too up and down, so that coupled with the fact that I think we're going to see a lot of Montgomery and Gibbs here, I'd rather not bank on Reynolds. Then Texans at the Falcons. I'm only going to start Nico Collins. He's kind of emerged as the top wide receiver for the Texans. Then you're guessing between Robert Woods and Tank Dell. Just way too many inconsistencies. If I had to go with one, Tank Dell is the higher upside guy, but he has a much, much, much lower floor. Robert Woods, it's not going to be anything sexy, doesn't have high upside, but you'll get around 7 to 10 fantasy points in PPR if that's what you're looking for. And then I'm sitting Drake London. I mean, simply put, I think Ritter is a very below average quarterback. I think that if the Falcons really want to increase their chances of doing something this year, they have to put in Heineke at quarterback. If that was the case, then I'd be saying start Drake London, but it's not, so I can't rely on him. For that reason, I am sitting him. Then Giants at the Dolphins. I'm only interested in the Dolphins wide receivers, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. It's as simple as that. I think both can have big days considering who they're facing in the Giants. And then I'm sitting all the New York wide receivers. What have you seen so far this last month to make you think that the Giants have any fantasy relevant wide receivers? It's been just a bunch of guys that have been getting the ball spread out to them. But Daniel Jones is very subpar, and I don't think they're going to be able to really keep pace here with the Dolphins. I think it's going to be another ugly game for the Giants. I'm sitting all the wide receivers. Moving on, Bengals at the Cardinals. I'll start Jamar Chase, and I'm starting Tyler Boyd tentatively. I have T. Higgins as a sit. I mean, I've heard reports that he's going to try and play with a broken rib, but that seems ludicrous to me. So I would imagine that he sits, and if that's the case, I think Tyler Boyd can get a nice little bump up in PPR formats. Jamar Chase, he's kind of gotten on track the last couple of weeks, so that's good. Now, if only Joe Burrow can do the same. For the Cardinals, I'll start Marquise Brown. I continue to say I think he is the top wide receiver for the Cardinals, and he's going to get the volume that saves him. Now, I know a popular name is going to be Michael Wilson after his performance last week, but again, other than last week, I need to see a little bit more consistently from Michael Wilson before I say, okay, you can firmly start him every single week. Then Eagles at the Rams. I'll start A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith for the Eagles. Both, I think, high upside in the wide receiver 2 category, so you start them. And obviously, I mean, both have the ability to be top 5 wide receivers like we saw with A.J. Brown this last week. For the Rams, could this be the week? Cooper Kupp is eligible to return. Will he actually is a separate question. If he's on the field, you start him. It's as simple as that. Yes, that means that our hero, Puka Nacua, will then take a large hit more than likely, but hopefully he's done enough this last month to say, okay, I'm still an integral part of this offense. If Kupp plays, Nacua will get a hit here, but you still start him. I think he just transitions to a wide receiver 2, hopefully no lower than that. And if Kupp does play, then Tutu Atwell becomes a sit. I will say if Kupp doesn't play, you can throw Atwell in one more week until Kupp returns. I think in PPR formats, he can get you 10, 11 points, as has been the case for the majority of the season so far. Then Jets at the Broncos. I'm only interested in starting Garrett Wilson here. Now, I know some people might say, well, the Broncos are atrocious. Why not Allen Lazard? Look, I still am not a Zach Wilson believer. So let's start with that. And then on top of that, I think that this could be a big game for a Breece Hall potentially. So for that reason, I'm only going to trust the top guys on this offense. Simply put, it's very tough to trust more than one fantasy relevant option here for the Jets without Aaron Rodgers. So that's why Lazard is a sit. And then for the Broncos, I'm sitting all Denver wide receivers. Look, this Jets defense is pretty stingy, and I have a hard time believing that the Broncos are going to be able to impose their will on them. They've been very disappointing, and this Jets defense isn't that of the Chicago Bears. There's a lot of names here, from Judy to Cortland Sutton, to Mims, and neither one has exactly stood out all that much, so I'm going to sit all of them. Then Chiefs at the Vikings. I'll start Justin Jefferson, right? I mean, number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. And then I said sit Jordan Addison last week. We were right. He didn't do anything. But now I have him back in the start column, and the reason being is I think this is a game that's much more favorable for him versus this Chiefs offense compared to the Panthers last week. I think the Vikings are going to have to potentially air it out a bunch, so we're going to see some more targets for Addison here. I think he can bounce back. He will, however, be a boom or bust touchdown guy in the low-end wide receiver 2 category. For the Chiefs, I'm going to sit all Kansas City wide receivers. You know, we've seen it. Patrick Mahomes goes to Travis Kelce. You see Pacheco at the running back position, and then all the wide receivers are kind of just guys that get the ball here and there, but none of them have really stood out to me, so I would rather sit all of them. Then Cowboys at the 49ers, big game. I'll start CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Ayuk here. For the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb has been the guy. Now, you could argue, I think, that you can start Brendan Cooks or Michael Gallup, but I just think it's going to be such a hard decision on which one of these guys gets the edge here. It's been different every single week, but I can definitely see one of these second guys having to stand up versus the 49ers because, I mean, the 49ers are legit. The Cowboys are going to have to air it out. If I had to bank on one, I would say Brendan Cooks. I think the talent is more so there. But there is something to say about familiarity with Dak and Michael Gallup. And then for the 49ers, Brandon Ayuk, I've been saying this for a while. You know, he was the much cheaper version of Deebo Samuel. I think he's outperformed him. Maybe Deebo Samuel dealing with some type of injury as well. Didn't get too much usage last week, so I'm not going to force it here. I would rather sit Deebo Samuel this week. Then Packers at the Raiders. I'll start Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. Normally, I would say only one Packers wide receiver, but the Raiders don't scare me at all defensively. So I think both these guys can be high in wide receiver 2s on the week. And then for the Raiders, Devontae Adams, hopefully he plays. And then Jacoby Myers, I will start only, however, if Jimmy Garoppolo is under center. Say what you will about Jimmy Garoppolo, but he's the best quarterback that the Raiders have. And if he's not under center, they only have one fantasy-relevant wide receiver, and that would be Devontae Adams. So that's how I'm treating the situation going forward. But with that, we wrap up our Week 5 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, we'll see you guys in future videos.